The rain came down hard. It hammered against the windshield of Detective Mara's car. Each drop was like a tiny fist pounding on the glass. She squinted, trying to see through the watery curtain. The park was a mess of dark shapes and long dancing shadows. This was the place. Another call had come in, another body found. Mara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This would be the 7th one, the 7th victim of the killer everyone was calling the Skin Collector. She pulled her trench coat tighter around her shoulders, the fabric already damp and heavy. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and something else, something metallic and wrong. She stepped out of the car, her boots sinking into the muddy ground. The flashing blue and red lights from the other police cars painted the trees in eerie colors. They made the scene look like something from a nightmare. Mara walked carefully toward the yellow tape that cordoned off the area. A young officer, his face pale and slick with rain, nodded at her. He didn't need to say anything. His eyes said it all. This one was just as bad as the others, maybe even worse. Mara took a deep breath, the cold, wet air filling her lungs. She had to see it for herself. She had to face the monster's latest work. There, beneath an old oak tree, was the victim. A man, posed as if he was simply resting. He was sitting on the wet grass, his back against the rough bark of the tree. His head was tilted slightly to the side and his eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. But that wasn't the part that made Mara's blood run cold. It was his skin. It was gone. Every inch of it had been carefully, expertly removed. There was no blood, not a single drop on the man or the grass around him. It was just a clean, horrifying sculpture of muscle and bone left out in the pouring rain. A grotesque masterpiece left for her to find. Mara knelt, being careful not to touch anything. She had seen this 6 times before, but it never got easier. It felt like a personal message. The killer was showing off, displaying their gruesome talent. Who could do something like this? How could they leave no trace, no sign of a struggle, no evidence at all? It was as if the victim simply allowed it to happen. She studied the body, her mind racing through every detail she knew about the case. The victims were all different. Men, women, old, young. There was no pattern, no connection. The only thing they shared was their terrible end. The rain continued to fall, washing away any hope of finding a clue. The scene was impossibly clean, a sterile stage for a terrifying play. Mara stood up, her gaze sweeping across the park. The other officers kept their distance, a silent circle of grim-faced observers. They knew this was her case. The Skin Collector felt like her own personal ghost, a shadow that followed her every step. Each new victim was a taunt, a whisper in the dark that said, "You can't catch me." She felt a surge of frustration mixed with a deep, chilling fear. This killer was more than just a murderer. They were a phantom, an artist of the macabre who left nothing behind but questions and perfectly preserved horror. She thought about the other 6 victims. The librarian posed with a book in a silent library. The musician placed at his piano, fingers resting on the keys. Each scene was a carefully constructed tableau, a silent story told through the most awful means imaginable. The lack of struggle was the most disturbing part. It suggested a power that went beyond simple violence. Was it drugs, hypnosis, or something far stranger? Something that defied logical explanation? Mara felt like she was chasing a ghost. A creature that could walk through walls and steal a person's very skin without spilling a drop of blood. The rain was getting heavier, turning the world into a blur. Her mind replayed every interview, every forensic report. Nothing. The lab found no foreign DNA, no fibers, no footprints that didn't belong to the police. It was as if the killer floated above the ground, touching nothing but their victims. Mara clenched her fists, her knuckles white. She was a good detective, one of the best. She solved puzzles for a living. But this was no puzzle. It was a void, an absence of logic. It was like trying to grab smoke with your bare hands. The killer was always one step ahead, a ghost in the machine, and she was always the one left to clean up the aftermath. The silence of the park was broken only by the relentless drumming of the rain. The other officers were starting to pack up the forensic equipment. The coroner's van was backing up slowly, its red lights cutting through the gloom. Soon the 7th victim would be taken away, becoming another file on Mara's desk, another photograph on her wall of unsolved nightmares. She felt a profound sense of failure. She was supposed to protect these people. She was supposed to stop the monster. But the monster was winning, and the city was living in fear. a fear that was beginning to creep into her own heart. As the coroner's team carefully moved the body, Mara turned away. She needed a moment alone. She walked a short distance from the controlled chaos of the crime scene, stopping at the edge of a small, dark pond. The rain created 1,000 tiny ripples on its surface. The park was mostly empty now, the yellow tape a lonely barrier in the night. She stared into the darkness, letting the rain soak her hair and run down her face like cold tears. It was on nights like this that the job felt heaviest, the weight of the dead pressing down on her. She felt a strange sensation, a prickling on the back of her neck, the feeling of being watched. She slowly turned her head. At first, she saw nothing but the swaying trees and the deep shadows they cast. The park seemed deserted. But then, a shape began to separate itself from the darkness. A tall figure, standing perfectly still near a cluster of bushes. It hadn't been there a second ago. Mara's hand instinctively went to the gun secured at her hip. Her heart started to pound against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat matching the rhythm of the rain. The figure was cloaked, a long dark garment that concealed it from head to toe. It just stood there, a silent statue in the downpour. Mara squinted, trying to make out any details. The material of the cloak seemed strange. It wasn't cloth, it had a patchwork quality, with different shades and textures sewn together in a grotesque pattern. As the figure took a single, slow step forward, a flash of lightning illuminated the scene for a terrifying instant. Mara gasped. She could see it clearly now. The cloak wasn't made of fabric, it was made of skin, human skin. A patchwork of pale and tan and dark pieces stitched together into a horrifying garment. It was the skin of the victims. Her breath caught in her throat. This was it. This was the skin collector, not a ghost or a phantom, but a real, living person standing right in front of her. All the air seemed to be sucked out of the park. The rain, the distant sirens, the rustling leaves, it all faded away into a muffled roar. The only thing that mattered was the figure in the skin cloak. It took another step, then another, moving with a chilling, unnatural grace. It moved silently, its feet making no sound on the wet leaves. It was coming for her. The hunter had finally come face to face with the prey. Or was it the other way around? The figure stopped about 20 feet away from her. Mara could not see a face beneath the deep hood of the cloak, only an abyss of shadow. The air grew thick with tension, so heavy she could barely breathe. Her training screamed at her to draw her weapon, to shout, to do something. But she was frozen, held in place by a mixture of terror and morbid curiosity. She had hunted this monster for months, and now here it was. The moment she had been waiting for and dreading had arrived. The silence stretched on, broken only by the steady hiss of the rain on the ground. It felt like an eternity. Then, a voice emerged from the darkness of the hood. It was a soft, raspy whisper that seemed to carry on the wind, cutting through the sound of the storm. It was a voice that was neither male nor female, a dry, rustling sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. It spoke a single word, a word that made Mara's blood turn to ice in her veins. "Mara," the figure whispered. It knew her name. This wasn't a random encounter. It was a planned meeting. The monster hadn't come for just anyone. It had come specifically for her. How? How could it know her name? Her identity had been kept from the press. Only the police force knew who was leading the investigation. A wave of pure, undiluted fear washed over her, colder than the rain. This changed everything. She wasn't just the detective on the case anymore. She was part of it. The figure tilted its head, a gesture that seemed almost curious, almost playful. The patchwork cloak of human skin shifted with the movement, a grotesque tapestry of stolen lives. The whispers came again, slithering through the night. "Your skin has such a lovely tone, detective." The figure took one more deliberate step forward. It would make a fine centerpiece. The implied threat hung in the air, a promise of unimaginable horror. Was this a confession? A threat? An invitation? Mara's hand trembled as she finally reached for her gun, her fingers fumbling with the clasp. This was no longer an investigation. This was survival. The dark shape under the hood seemed to watch her, waiting. The park, the rain, the shadows. It was all a stage, and the final act was about to begin. The skin collector had found a new piece for its collection, and it was her.